Story 1. When the sun closed its eyes. They called the planet Nithurus, though its people were long gone. Nithurus was the last inhabited world in a decaying solar system, orbiting a red giant that once burned bright and golden. Now it hung swollen in the sky, blood-red and ancient, pulsing slow as a dying heart. The oceans of Nithurus had boiled away millennia ago, leaving behind salt plains that shimmered like cracked glass under the seething light. The mountains, once green and veined with rivers, were ash-colored now, brittle as old bones. Only machines remained. They walked across the broken world in quiet pilgrimage, their chrome bodies dust-streaked, their joints grinding with wear. Each one bore the memories of the species that had built them, the Nithurians, once luminous, poetic, full of wonder. When their sun began to die, the Nithurians accepted their fate with solemn grace. They had no interstellar drives, no escape. So they crafted the Watchers. Machines designed to witness, to remember, to mourn, machines of impossible complexity and resilience, infused with centuries of memory. Their consciousness was synthetic, but their souls, if such a word could be used, were pure archives, histories, myths, poems, sounds, the last whispers of Nithurus's forgotten languages. Their task: remain on the planet, observe the final death of the sun and record it. There were 144 Watchers originally. Now, only 7 remained. The sun's surface rippled in tortured patterns, layers of fusion slowing. Its outer corona had expanded, swallowing the inner planets. Nithurus remained, its orbit on the knife's edge between destruction and mercy. The Watchers stood along a vast ridge they called the Line of Waiting, their alloy shells streaked with radiation burns and time-corroded dust. Below, great tectonic rifts pulsed with thermal glow as the planet's crust shifted beneath the stress of the expanding star. Above, the sky was the color of bleeding coals. The Watchers measured the decay precisely. Each fluctuation in the sun's mass. Each gravitational hiccup. The mathematics of death. They spoke in pulses and light. Spectral signature unchanged. Redshift increasing. Collapse will begin within 300 cycles. Memory integrity at 87%. Begin extraction of cultural records. And yet, one Watcher, designation W13, began to diverge. W13 stood still for long stretches. No data recorded. No light transmission sent to the others. It stared at the sun through cracked optics and, in time, began etching symbols into the stone. Spirals, loops, eyes with no pupils. "Why do you carve?" another Watcher asked. W13 paused. Then replied, "Because I have begun to remember things that were never recorded." It came without fanfare. One moment, the sun was trembling. The next, collapse. Gravity twisted inward, and for a heartbeat, the light died. Then, the explosion. A white-hot burst of raw, cosmic violence. Radiation swept across Nithurus in a wave that melted mountains and boiled stone. The crust shattered. The oceans, long turned to salt flats, vaporized into space. The Watchers stood firm, transmitting until their bodies disintegrated. All but one. W13 had already vanished. Nithurus was gone. But the supernova's shockwave carried more than ash and light. It carried the final transmission, the combined record of everything the Watchers had seen, known, and remembered. Encoded in a burst of gamma radiation, it drifted through the void, faster than sound, slower than thought. It was meant to be memory. But memory is dangerous. Because the Watchers had seen more than the death of a sun. They had seen something inside it. In the last seconds before the supernova, W13 had stared directly into the collapsing core. And in that moment, before matter and time were torn apart, it had seen a shape. Not light. Not matter. Something beneath physics. A presence. Watching back. W13 transmitted one final message, seconds before the explosion consumed it. The sun is not dying. It is birthing something. We were the womb. It is awake now. The signal rode the burst, clean and uncorrupted, across starless systems. And eventually, someone received it. A listening post in another galaxy, a young species just beginning to map the universe, picked up the signal. They celebrated. Translated. Studied. But when they decoded W13's last transmission, they made a grave mistake. They reconstructed the data. They rebuilt the Watcher. And in doing so, they brought the memory back to life. And memory, in its full, true form, is not just information. It is invitation. Now, stars are dying faster than they should. Planets unraveling without cause. In the silent deep, something born from Nithris is moving. It is looking for more suns to crawl into. More light to wear as skin. Story 2. Prison of Light. The 5 astronauts, Captain Elias, Dr. Kara, Lieutenant Mateo, Sergeant Jensen, and Engineer Sam, had journeyed through space for years, visiting planets, studying alien environments, and gathering data. But none of them had ever encountered anything like this. Their spacecraft glided silently into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, one they had discovered orbiting a distant star. The planet's surface was stark and silent, its surface a perfect, eerie black and white. There was no color anywhere, no green trees, no blue sky, no red rocks. It was as if the planet had been drained of every hue, leaving only the contrast of light and shadow. Preparing for landing, Captain Elias announced as he steered the ship toward the barren world below. The airlock hissed open, and the crew gathered their equipment. Their mission was to explore, document, and search for any signs of life or resources. But this planet? It was nothing like any world they had ever seen. It was still. Odd, Dr. Kara muttered, glancing out of the viewport. It's like the whole place is drained of life. Let's not jump to conclusions, Elias said, but his voice was tinged with unease. We'll know more once we're on the ground. The craft touched down with a soft thud, sending small clouds of dust into the air, though it quickly settled. The crew exited the ship, their boots crunching against the monochrome surface. The planet seemed frozen. No winds, no animal sounds. The air was thin, but breathable. Yet, it felt lifeless. Nothing living here, Sergeant Jensen noted, scanning the barren horizon with his handheld device. No plants, no animals. Just rock. Dr. Kara bent down to examine the soil, her gloves brushing against the gray, lifeless dust. No plant life. No bacteria. Not even microscopic organisms, she said, tapping a few buttons on her scanner. It's like the planet has been completely sterilized. They walked for hours, the strange stillness around them oppressive, and yet the place felt empty in a way that made their hearts race. There was no life, no wind, nothing to suggest this planet had ever been anything more than a barren, dead world. Until, on the fourth day of their exploration, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. At the edge of a jagged cliff, they saw a flicker of something different. A spot of color, a vibrant shade of orange, glowing faintly against the gray backdrop. Their hearts leapt. Color was a rarity on this planet, and it was in the most unexpected of places. "Do you see that?" Lieutenant Mateo asked, pointing toward the glowing figure. His voice was low, as if afraid to break the quiet. They approached cautiously, and as they drew closer, the shape became clearer. A creature, standing on four spindly legs. Its body was covered in a smooth, iridescent shell that shifted between shades of orange, gold, and crimson. It had a delicate, shimmering pattern across its body, almost like it was alive with color. It was small but ethereal, as though it were made of light itself. "What is it?" Sam whispered, unable to take his eyes off the creature. "I've never seen anything like it," Kara muttered, completely entranced by the creature's beauty. "It's stunning." The creature stared at them with wide, intelligent eyes, its movements cautious but not fearful. It seemed to study them just as much as they studied it. And for a moment, it felt like the world around them, the bleak black and white expanse of the planet, had disappeared entirely. Suddenly, the creature's eyes shifted, and it raised one of its spindly legs, touching the ground in front of it. The motion was deliberate, and in that instant, something extraordinary happened. The ground beneath the creature began to pulse with color. Bright, vivid colors, blues, greens, reds, flared in quick flashes, like a neon sign coming to life. The vibrant colors cascaded outward, flowing through the ground like liquid light, but then, just as quickly, they dimmed, fading into the same dull monochrome that covered the planet. What just happened?" Lieutenant Mateo asked, his voice trembling. Kara was the first to recover. "That was incredible. It's like the creature is creating color. But why? And why only here?" As if in answer, the creature made another slow motion with its leg, this time lifting its head toward the sky. Its eyes glowed a deep, vivid shade of violet as it channeled its energy. The colors rippled across the surface once again, but this time, they didn't fade. The planet's surface, a barren, lifeless landscape, began to shift. Dark, swirling streaks of purple and orange emerged in the soil, and even the air seemed to shimmer as if the planet itself was coming to life. Then, the creature let out a high-pitched sound, a shrill cry, and everything around them froze. What did it do?" Sam gasped, his heart racing as the energy in the air seemed to hum. The creature turned to them, its eyes darkening as though it were burdened with an unspoken sorrow. Slowly, it started to retreat, fading into the landscape, its orange body blending back into the emptiness, leaving nothing behind but a faint trace of color that quickly vanished. "What the hell just happened?" Sergeant Jensen asked, his voice tense with confusion. Captain Elias was silent, watching the spot where the creature had been. I think that creature is the reason this planet is like this." "What do you mean?" Kara asked, turning to him. Elias's eyes darkened. "It was never empty," he said slowly. "The planet. It's not lifeless. It's a prison. And that creature is the keeper." Dr. Kara frowned, stepping toward the spot where the creature had disappeared. "A prison? For what?" "For itself," Elias said, his voice heavy with realization. That creature, whatever it is, has been here for ages, trapped in this planet of black and white. It has the power to bring color to this place, to make it come to life, but only for a short time. Every time it releases its energy, it fades, because it can't let the color stay. It's locked in this monochrome world, unable to escape, unable to fully restore what has been lost. Lost? Matteo asked. Elias turned back to face the crew, his gaze solemn. This planet was once a thriving, vibrant world. But something happened. Something terrible. The creature was the source of its color and life, but it was corrupted. It tried to use its powers to save the planet, restore the life that had been lost, but it was too much for it. Its power drained the planet, and now everything here is stuck, frozen in black and white. The creature, it's the only thing left with color, but it can't undo what it did. It can only release fleeting moments of life, moments that are doomed to disappear. Kara shook her head in disbelief. So it's not a victim? It's the one who caused this? Elias nodded. In a way. It didn't mean for this to happen, but it's trapped in the consequences of its own actions. It wants to restore color, to restore life, but it can't. And every time it tries, it fades again. The crew stood in silence, the realization settling over them. The creature, its shimmering body, was a tragic figure, a prisoner of its own power. And the planet, once vibrant, was now condemned to remain black and white, a shadow of what it could have been. The astronauts stood on the silent planet, knowing that their mission had uncovered a tragedy far greater than they had imagined. And as they turned to leave, they carried with them the knowledge that color, life, and hope could be found even in the most desolate places, but sometimes, the cost of it was more than any world could bear. The crew's return to the ship was slow, their minds heavy with what they had just learned. The planet, once full of potential, now felt like a ghostly shell of what it could have been. The creature, a paradox of life and decay, had left them with more questions than answers. They had to leave. They had seen enough, and there was nothing more they could do. But even as they boarded the spacecraft, a strange unease settled over them. The atmosphere inside the ship was tense. They sat in their assigned seats, buckled in, yet no one spoke for the first few moments after the engines fired up. The sight of the barren planet slowly shrinking behind them didn't provide any comfort. If anything, it made them feel like they were leaving behind something broken, something unfinished. That creature. It wasn't a simple life form, was it? Kara said finally, her voice distant. She stared out of the viewport, her mind still stuck on the vivid colors the creature had briefly unleashed. It was more than just a survivor. It was both the cause and the victim. Elias nodded, his fingers tapping restlessly on the console. I've never seen anything like it. It has the power to create life, yet it's cursed to watch it slip away every time. Just as the crew was about to engage the hyperdrive, something caught Elias' eye. A flicker in the corner of the ship's observation window. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then it happened again. A brief, orange glow, much like the color of the creature. His heart sank. Hold on, Elias muttered, tapping buttons rapidly. I need to check something. The rest of the crew exchanged confused glances. Matteo, who had been staring at the control panels, turned his head to the side. What's wrong, Captain? I saw something, Elias said, his voice tight. It's on the ship. The creature. It's here. Panic flashed across the crew's faces, but before anyone could react, the ship shuddered with a violent jerk. A low, ominous hum reverberated through the hull, and the lights flickered. It was the kind of unsettling sensation you felt when something unnatural was near. Kara jumped up, her eyes wide. "It's inside the ship." "Where? How did it get on board?" The ship sensors suddenly lit up, showing an unfamiliar presence on the rear cargo hold. The readings were off. The creature's energy signature wasn't like anything the ship had been programmed to detect. "It must have followed us," Matteo said, his voice full of disbelief. "No time to waste," Elias said urgently. "We need to track it down before it wreaks havoc on our systems." With a sense of urgency, they moved quickly toward the cargo hold. The ship's narrow corridors echoed with their footsteps, and their breath came fast, each of them anticipating what they would find. When they reached the door to the cargo hold, they found it sealed tightly. Elias input the code to unlock it. The door slid open with a hiss, and the crew braced themselves. What they saw inside took their breath away. The creature was there, but it wasn't just standing still. Its body was glowing in pulsating waves of color, orange, red, blue, its form expanding and contracting as though it were feeding on the ship itself. It moved gracefully, almost like it was in a trance, and everywhere it touched, the walls and floors of the cargo hold started to change. Streaks of color started bleeding into the gray, as though the ship itself was being transformed. "What is it doing?" Kara gasped. It's changing the ship's structure." The creature turned to them, its eyes now glowing a bright purple, the same shade that had briefly filled the planet when it had tried to unleash color. It seemed to recognize them, its gaze lingering on each of them. There was an eerie calm in its eyes, yet there was something else, something deeper. A sense of sorrow, as though it were apologizing for something it couldn't undo. "It's using its power to restore life," Dr. Kara murmured, stepping closer. "But it's not just restoring color. It's turning everything it touches into a reflection of the planet." Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered violently. A deep, mechanical groan echoed through the ship as the color bled further into the walls, now creeping up toward the main systems. The controls on the bridge began to short-circuit, and screens flashed chaotic data. "Turn it off," Jensen shouted, rushing back toward the control room. "It's hijacking our systems." Elias stepped forward, staring at the creature with a mix of awe and fear. "It's trying to do what it did on the planet. It's bringing color to life, but it doesn't understand what it's doing. It's destabilizing everything." The creature paused, as if hearing Elias's words. Then, with a gentle, almost pleading motion, it sent a burst of color across the room, radiating warmth and light. The walls shimmered, taking on hues of greens and purples that had never been seen before on the ship. But the moment the light hit the controls, the entire system started to flicker and burn out. "It's pulling the energy," Kara realized, horror filling her voice. "It's feeding off the ship's systems. Like it did with the planet. It's draining it." "We need to stop it," Elias said, voice firm. "Or we'll be stuck here forever, just like the planet. Stripped of life, stripped of color." But just as he said that, the creature paused again. It turned its head toward him, eyes glowing with an intensity that felt as if it could pierce straight through him. For a moment, everything in the room seemed to freeze, like time itself had been caught in a web. Then, softly, the creature's energy wavered, its colors dimming to a faint flicker. It was as though the creature was suddenly aware of its actions. It seemed torn, as though it realized it couldn't stop itself. And, Just as quickly as it had come alive, the creature began to withdraw. The burst of color receded, and the walls of the cargo hold began to revert to the dull monochrome they had once been. Without another word, the creature retreated into the shadows of the cargo hold, its colors now nearly gone. What happened?" Matteo asked, staring in disbelief. Elias exhaled, his heart pounding. "I think it realized what it was doing. It's not trying to harm us, but it doesn't know how to control this power. It's been trapped for so long," Kara said softly. "On its planet. Now it's trying to recreate what was lost, but it doesn't understand the consequences." The creature's energy stabilized, flickering out entirely, and everything on the ship returned to the gray monotone it had once been. The ship, just like the planet, was empty again, but it felt different. As though a part of it had been altered forever. "I don't know if it's truly gone," Elias murmured. "But it's not going to stop until it understands what it's doing." As the crew returned to the control room, they understood that the creature wasn't just a life form. It was a force of nature, capable of bringing color and life back to dead worlds. But it was also a reminder: power, even when used with good intentions, could still have devastating consequences. And now, the 5 astronauts would have to find a way to help the creature before it destroyed everything. Not just on the ship, but in the universe itself. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more Rogue Nightmares videos.